Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this episode 2627B and today's date is November 14, 2021. The top of the episode is Who Guards the Narrative? People must be made aware operations underway now. The deep state, the corrupt politicians, the fake news, big tech companies, they're panicking. Actually, there's panic in DC while we're playing a great game of chess right now. The winner has already been determined, and in chess all you do is you play out the rest of the moves, and yes, the deep state, what they're going to try to do as the moves are being played out. They're going to try to mess up the Patriots with false flags, chaos, and you name it. But each move brings pain to the deep state players, and as the chess pieces are moved into place and they see the walls closing in on them. That's the phrase the fake news used to use when they talked about Trump and Mueller. Well, they'll be closing in on them, and we're going to see more and more individuals resign, retire, or later on as the walls are closing on them. Take the easy way out. Talking about suicide weekend, and we're starting to see the panic, and the panic now is off the charts. Why? Because Trump right now, he's on the hunt. He has all the information. He's dripping it out. He's making these people squirm, and each time there's another indictment. It gets worse and worse for them soon. It won't just be dripped, wait a couple of weeks, drip, it's going to be drip, and then boom, he's gonna hit him so hard. I do believe Scavino has sent us a message actually signaling that yes, this is the plan, because who guards the narrative, who guards the information? How do you make people aware of this? You need to put into place certain operations that removes the guard of all information. And I do believe that's where we're at right now. We'll get into that a little bit later. But let's look at the panic right now. We have Maxine Waters, and she was giving an interview, and she says Trump is the worst threat to our democracy that anyone has ever known now. Why is she even talking about Trump? He's not in office. Why isn't she talking about Joe Biden's policies and everything else? Why does it always come back to Trump? Think about that for a second, because they know what's really happening. They know of everything that they've done, all their corruption, all their schemes, how they got rich, you name it. And we've seen a couple of posts with Maxine Waters where she's gotten very, very wealthy off the people of this country. Look at a lot of the corrupt politicians. They came in with pretty much nothing, and as they spend all their time in government, they know they're going to go to jail, because once everything's released to the public is going to see all of this. Now we see that Representative Jerry Nadler, now remember Nadler, he handled the impeachment hoax as he told us that the riots were a myth, and he basically wrote his own rules in the House, and he tried to push the agenda very, very hard. Well, it seems there's retirement talk growing around Representative Jerry Nadler, which I do believe he'll probably start to bow out, because as the pieces are moved on the chessboard, people are going to say, okay, I see what's happening here, we don't have a chance, and I'm going to have to leave now. It's the same with the fake news. It's going to be the same with big tech. Remember Brian Williams, he just decided to retire. We're going to see a lot more people actually at CNN, because their ratings are so low. They're going to start to reorder everything, they're going to start to remove people. And yes, more and more people going to leave. Actually, Trump put out a statement about Brian Williams, and this is what it says: looks like Lion Brian Williams is leaving, ratings challenged. MSNBC to search for new employment, never had the credibility to do what he is doing after he got caught lying about his involvement in a fake military airplane skirmish. He later confessed it never happened. He's tired of his current show, and they're obviously tired of him. Won't be missed, and I do believe we're going to see a lot more people retired. Now we can see that Durham, he's on the hunt. We have Kash Patel giving interviews, we have Ratcliffe giving interviews, and Kash Patel is letting everyone know that McCabe is on deck. Now Pragmatic. He put this out on Telegram, is from a Fox article, and says the following: well, James Comey and Andrew McCabe be indicted, I believe so, on what charge? And then refers to the article, and it says in just 2016 Carter Page was a confidential human source, and yet they accused Page before the FISA court of being an agent of a foreign power, Russia. Comey and McCabe both signed off on a pay on Page's 4 FISA applications, knowing that their target was not an agent of Russia. They lied to the court in order to obtain a warrant to spy on Page because of the nature of FISA surveillance. Everyone in Page's orbit also came under FBI surveillance, including the entire Trump campaign at minimum. Comey and McCabe can be charged with knowingly providing false information to a court. In his interview with the DOJ Inspector General, McCabe said he would not have signed the FISA application had he known the information and it was false. I believe Durham will prove that McCabe knew at the time he signed the application. The information was false. I do believe all these people knowingly knew the information was false. But they went ahead with the agenda because they needed to get rid of Trump, and they were being directed to do so. Now let's go back to post 2697. This is February 12, 2019, and it says, shall we play a game? Where are they now? Federal Bureau of Investigation. James Comey Director fired Andrew McCain. Deputy Director fired. James Robisky Chief of Staff and Senior Counselor fired. James Baker, General Counsel fired. Del Priestep fired. Peter Strzok fired. Lisa Page fired. Mike Corton fired. Josh Campbell fired. Michael Steinbach fired. Don Black alone fired. James Turtle fired. And this goes on. About all these people have been fired. Now think about it. Trump was cleaning house. Then these people were being fired left and right. He was draining the swamp because think about all the things they found out. Now think about what's happening right now. Let's go a little bit further down in this post. It says Coleman authored Anthony Weiner 2 unrelated 3 Weiner texting 15-year-old explicit 926 Federal SW iPhone iPad laptop. Initial analysis of laptop, thousands of emails. Hillary Clinton and Foundation Crimes Against Children. Kevin Klein Smith. Remember, he was indicted because he changed the email. So this way the judge would approve the FISA warrant to Sheena Guar. Sally Moyer. It all says track and follow. Jason V. here and track and follow. Nothing being done. Fake news. Back then Trump the Patriots. They were cleaning house. These were the people that went ahead and they spied on Trump. Now, Richard Grenell, he came out on Twitter and said the following: Fiona Hill, Andrew McCabe, Jake Sullivan. I do believe what he's saying here is that these are the next indictments now. Think about it. Think about the people that have been appearing on the fake news. Let's take Fiona Hill for example. I mean, we had Christopher Steele, we had Igor Dyachenko, we had all these people, but Fiona Hill, she says, well, if Trump comes back into power in 2024, I'm going to be called the dissident. Well, first of all, he's already in power. Second of all, the resident will be removed way before then and Trump will be in the White House and you will not be called a dissident. You'll be called a treasonous traitor. And she was out on the fake news. Getting ahead of the story. The same with everyone else. But I do believe this might be the order of the indictments. We'll have to wait and see how this all plays out now. What's very interesting is we know that big tech, they're going to be censoring a lot more people. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. If you go against their narrative, they're going to be censoring you if you're talking. And if you're talking about Durham's case and how these people were just going to get rid of you, that's pretty much what you're going to see as time goes on. They're making the case. I mean, just like they made the case with James OK, which we'll talk about in a second, where they raided his apartment and another journalist. They're trying to make this the new normal. Yes, it has to do with the New York Times and their lawsuit. But think about how this whole thing opens it up, where the S's now can shut down or try to shut down certain alternative media sites. This is what they're really trying to do. They're trying to use fear, and if fear doesn't work, they push even harder. Is that the reporters, I'm not saying all of them, some of them, they're starting to realize that this might have implications on themselves. Now remember, most of the corporate media, the fake news, they're controlled by the intelligence agencies, they're fed stories, but some of the reporters are waking up saying, whoa, this is going to be a problem. I mean, this is coming out of Politico. Says FBI raid on Project Veritas founder's home sparks questions about press freedoms. Yes, they are going to silence anyone that goes against the narrative or who actually does investigative reporting. Now a lot of the fake news outlets like MSNBC, CNN, they don't really have to worry because they're controlled by the intelligence operatives. So the SS is not going to read them if there's a reporter that goes against their narrative. Yes, they will be raided. Now Patel Patriot on Telegram for this from Just Human is at the following. I could be wrong, but I think New York Times and Kabul just willingly stepped into 2 bear traps. Now what do we always say? Why interfere with the enemy while they're in the process of destroying themselves? Do you think this helped the deep state? No, but let me continue premise. I don't believe for one second that James O'Keefe left anything on that phone that he wasn't willing for the FBI to have. He just experienced one former journalist and one current journalist of his being raided 2 days prior. He is too smart, too well trained and too experienced to have left sensitive data intel on that phone. Likewise, I don't believe for one second that Steve Bannon is surprised or anything less than eager to take on the January 6th committee that trapped for the New York Times. They just reintroduced Biden's diary into the public conversation a year after that story died. Not good for the Bidens. Number 2, New York Times just published a story based on an old info about Project Veritas and privileged communications with their lawyers, for which James can file another lawsuit against them. Also, the story actually made Project Veritas look pretty good. Number 3, New York Times may have just exposed their leaker. If the New York Times got what they claimed, it's a scandal. James may have left that info on the phone, purposely knowing New York Times more liquor inside the FBI office or lab would transfer it to New York Times. There's a chain of custody for that phone that can be followed, and yeah, they're going to follow it, and this is not helping the deep state. It's not helping them because people are looking this and now actually certain reporters are questioning this and this is not going to help them in the end. And I do believe Just Human is absolutely right now. What's very interesting is we know they've been pushing climate change. Their whole agenda is to bring us into the Great Reset, into the Green New Deal, and we can see they're already paving the way. And remember, their entire mission here is to get us all to accept our carbon footprint, where they can allocate carbon to us and say this is the amount that you can use once you run out, that is it. So you can use carbon to purchase things, you need carbon to drive someplace, you need carbon to do anything in your life now. What's very interesting, an article just came out and he says in Canada, world's first patient diagnosed with climate change. I mean, seriously? So the patient was diagnosed with climate change, so why would they be put in the story outright now that someone is diagnosed with climate change? I mean, it's fake, but they're trying to make it seem like it's real because Soros and others that are now like Gore and others that are pushing this narrative, they're going to say that listen, since everyone is contributing to climate change, so if they can list climate change as the diagnosis or the cause of death and they're blaming the people, can they push their agenda? Yes, they can. And they're using fear to do this, and they're going to keep pushing this, and you're going to see more of this. But again, the people are awake now, people are starting to see the truth all over the place. Remember Trump, when he was talking to the representatives out in California, knew some of the rest, and they were saying global warming is terrible, it's gonna get hotter and hotter, he gets colder. And this is coming from Steve Malloy. This is on Twitter, says Antarctica has coldest winter since measurements began 60 years ago. And when you look at the graph, what do you see? You see it all getting colder and colder and colder and colder. Not warmer actually. Why do you think they changed it from global warming to climate change? Because they realized the Earth was cooling off. You see, the Earth goes through cycles controlled by the sun. It goes through a warm period, it goes through a cold period. If you go back to the 70s, do you know they were telling us that the Ice Age was coming, that everything was going to be frozen over, and then in the late 80s they realized that the Earth is warming up. Now, let's talk about heat now, global warming, and they just go back and forth. That's all they do. In the 80s, 90s, they told us that snow was going to be a thing of the past. Once we hit 2000, they told us that there were going to be states and countries that were going to be underwater. You know of any state or country that's underwater? I'm not talking about tidal waves or typhoons or anything like that, or hurricanes. I'm talking about naturally, where the sea level just rose up and all of a sudden Florida is completely underwater, California is underwater. You don't see any of that. It's all fake, phony and false. Now they're using fear. This is their entire tactic. But I do believe that people are seeing through this, just like because they keep pushing fear and people are starting to see, like, why are you doing this? It doesn't even make sense. And the fear is not having the effect they thought it was going to have. So what we're gonna do? They're gonna push even more fear, and you're going to see their true colors. You're gonna see their dictator side come out. Yes, you're going to see evil. So the new restrictions will be enforced on an unprecedented scale, the Interior Minister said, with fines of up to /U20 AC 30,000. Now, the people are out there, they're protesting. I mean, think about what we're seeing, and this is happening in Austria. They're seeing the same exact thing now here in the States. We can see that, like around the world, people are pushing back. Yes, we see protests all over the world. We see protests in this country, and I do believe as we see more and more protests in this country, they're going to use Antifa to push back. Actually, Andy No tweeted this out and said right-wing activists. Yes, Antifa is the foot soldier of the deep state, just like back in Nazi Germany they had the brown shirts. Pretty much the same thing out in Oklahoma. We can see the Oklahoma National Guard unit that was Clinton. They're putting out, think about it for a second. Yeah. If they knowingly are causing harm to the people and they know that they manipulated data, they know they're paying off doctors, but they're not liable. Especially on things. You want to see how fast the pharmaceutical companies say, okay, you know something, we're gonna back off, because what do you think the company's going to do if they're held liable? Well, they're going to point to the big pharma companies. Do you think the employers are going to say, yes, we're going to mandate this now? They're doing it just to do it, because really this is part of their agenda. Remember, right now we're in a fascist country. We have government, big tech, big pharma corporations all working together. And the conspiracy of where they wanted to bring us is no longer a conspiracy. They don't work as advertised. They wane over time. They can't protect you. And this makes the perfect case for boosters. This is what they've been planning all along. Fauci just confirmed it by telling everyone this, and he appeared on the New York Times, and this is exactly what he said. He said that they wait over time. They were wrong about the 2016 election. Rittenhouse coming to Russian collusion bounties on U.S. soldiers. Lab leak theory, Jesse Smollett. The fake news never gets anything right. Why? Because they're not investigating. It's not true reporting. They are taking instruction and they're pushing a narrative, and every single time when the truth comes out it falls apart. Now Liz Cheney with January 6 on select committee, she's saying, and she's threatening criminal contempt charges that Mark Meadows, remember we already have Bannon, who was indicted because he didn't comply with the subpoena. Now this has been going on for a very long time. There's many people that have not complied with subpoenas. We have Eric Holder, Bill Barr and many others going back throughout time that never complied with subpoenas. But it's very interesting that they decided to go after Bannon. Now are they going to go after the rest? We'll have to say Trump could have simply said the following: this country has perhaps never done to anyone what they have done to Steve Bannon, and they are looking to do it to others. Also, if they would be so tough with China, Russia and the world who no longer respects us, maybe our country would not be failing at a level at which we have never seen before. We never talk about making the country great, and it is now heading in an unthinkable direction with Afghanistan withdrawal, open borders, inflation, woke everything, and so much more of the USA as a radicalized mass. And then he said the following in another statement. He said, "Why aren't they investigating the people in states on the election causing the protest of January 6? But if anybody was near the Capitol waving an American flag, they had nothing but trouble. American patriots are not going to allow this subversion of justice to continue, including the use of prosecutors, local, state and federal, to torment and destroy innocent people, all this while our country is going to help." Absolutely. And yes, people are watching this and they're saying no more. No more. They're rejecting everything the deep state is doing. Actually, the deep state is destroying themselves as they keep pushing this. Now General Flynn with the elections, he put this on. This is from Samantha America, said the following: from now on, Republican counties need to hold their count until Democrat counties are 100% in. Yes, he says, absolutely, this way they can't wait. You're already done collecting all the votes. It's 100%. Okay, now we'll show you the Republican side. This would destroy them then, because they wouldn't know they wouldn't know how many they needed, of course. Later what they can do. We just found some more over here. But guess what? They don't count now because you told us you have 100% of them now. Seth Castle, he put this out on Telegram. He said, research the term gaslighting and familiarize yourself with its origin. There is no proof, they say, other than all the proof that has been presented. The hours upon hours of videotape ballot harvesting in Georgia. The phantoms all over the dirty voter rolls. The withholding of subpoena materials. The list goes on. You're being told water isn't wet. This is made possible only because media, even if it only truly saturates the brains of 30% of the population. This is why I cannot envision more than 2/3 of the country finding the truth of the election to be that true history will look back on actual real-life human beings. Break someone free today. Absolutely. Now what's very interesting is Trump. He made a call out to the American public and saying we need to build the offensive. We need people. And he said any interest from good and smart American first Republican patriots to run primary campaigns against Representatives Tom Rice, John Cocco, Don Bacon, Don Young, Fred Upton, Andrew Garbarino, Peter Mayer, David McKinley, Nancy Mace, Hammy Butler and Chris Smith. You'll have my backing. Gonzalez's anger and Reid already quit, they're out of politics. Hopefully for good. Warmonger Liz Cheney challenge accepted is on the skids with a 19% approval rating. Save America, start by saving the GOP from Rhino's sellout and no losers in the Senate. The disaster from Alaska, Lisa Murkowski challenge accepted, must go. There is almost nobody worse, and yes, Trump is making a call. Let's drain the swamp. Let's get good hard-working people in there. Let's change the face of the Republican Party. Remember, he can change the Republican Party, he can endorse people, the Democrats, well, the deep state, the invisible enemy, that's a whole different subject because they're going to be going down for criminal activity. Yes, there's many Republicans, rhinos, that also did the same exact thing, but Trump. He has the ability to change the Republican Party to drain the swamp. The DS. That's a whole another story that has to be exposed to everyone to see exactly what they've been doing over the many years now. Dan Scavino, he put out a video and this is from Julian Rum, he replayed it. This is from a year ago and this is a minute 57 seconds. So I want to refer to post 157 and 158. But before we get there, because it has to do with it, there's a tweet that Just Human put out on Telegram, and this is Shantae Mayrobian, and it says the job of the mainstream media today is to make you think that the views of 10% of the country are actually the views of 80% of the country. Now keep that in mind, because I do believe Scavino just sent us a message of where we are headed. And I do believe this is getting rid of the guard of information. The guard of the narrative. And this is what post 157 says this November 20th, 2017. We're coming up on what a 4-year delta. And it says the following. What is a key? What is a key used for? What is a guard? What is a guard used for? Who unlocked the door of all doors? Was it pre-planned? Do you believe in coincidences? What is information? Who controls the release of information? Who has all the information? Who disseminates information? What is the mainstream media? Who controls the mainstream media? Who really controls the mainstream media? The puppet masters? Why are we made to believe the mainstream media are the only credible news sources? Who controls the mainstream media? Who really controls the mainstream media? Soros puppet masters, the central bank, you name it, all the way up the chain. Why are we made to believe the mainstream media are the only credible news sources? Why is this relevant? Why are non-mainstream media platforms cast as conspiracy and/or non-credible? Why are non-mainstream media platforms cast as conspiracy and/or non-credible? Yes, it's repeated twice. What happens when an entity and/or individual accumulates power? Define corruption. Wealth equals power. Power equals influence. Influence equals control. Rinse and repeat. You see anything familiar in the corrupt politicians and everyone else? Wealth equals power. Power can then influence. Influence equals then control. What power of influence was recently discovered, specifically our 2016 election? How much power of influence is Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, etc. have been influencing the minds of the people? Has the stranglehold of the mainstream media been diminished? What is open source? What has become blatantly obvious since the election of POTUS? Why would they allow this visibility to occur? Were they not prepared to counter what miscalculation occurred? What opposite impact did this generate? How did POTUS recognize and invert? They weren't keeping track of social media. They thought the fake news had control and then people were speaking out on social media. I do believe they miscalculated Trump. He used this to his advantage. Define corruption, define censorship, define controlled censorship. Is that what we're seeing today? Yes. What action is Twitter taking? Effective mid-December? What is the purpose of this action? Possible test to understand public government response. Post 158 continued. When was this announced? When did the events in Saudi Arabia transpire? Who controlled a large portion of Twitter stock? Why is this relevant to find oppression? Who controls the narrative? Who really controls the narrative? Who guards the narrative? Why does the mainstream media shelter and protect select party members? Does this protection insulate these party members? Who controls the narrative? What laws were put in place to protect the mainstream media from lawsuits? Who specifically passed this law? What prevents a news organization from simply making up sources and stories? What previous Supreme Court ruling provided protection to reporters from having to reveal their confidential sources? How many people are unaware of the truth due to the stranglehold? How much people be made aware of an alternate reality? What are crumbs? Think Hollywood, DC. The fine leading think play. What has been occurring recently? The stage must be set. Do you think the stage is being set? I do. I think Trump came out with the announcement of True Social, the acquisition company, because they need to remove the guard of information. He knew this from the very beginning. What if Hugh Hefner was a clown in America? How could this be applied? Fantasyland. Who has all the information? No such agency. The hunters become the hunted. Operations are underway, operators are active. Disinformation is real. Disinformation is necessary. Some gets out the Great Awakening hunt for Red October. I do believe that Scavino's letting us know that Trump the Patriots. They're going after the guards of information, and they're going to remove these guards so people can see an alternative reality. The real reality. The truth. There is only one truth. Yeah, that's all there is. It's bad. It's backed by facts. So I do believe this is going to be presented to the American people. Actually, they've been seeing it. More and more people are seeing it. But I think this is going to be brought to another level. And I do believe this is what the deep state players, the corrupt politicians, the puppet masters, this is what they're panicking about. They're panicking about the truth, the facts. Remember, they have been controlling the information, they've been guarding the information when this is removed. And they can't control the narrative. They can't back what they're trying to do. How do you stop it? Shut down communications, you block everything. And I do believe Scavino's letting us know that this is coming. We know it's coming because we know the Truth Social is coming live 1 February. And we also know there's many things happening in January. The Patriots, they're pushing their plan forward. They're going to show the world the truth. The Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially prepared. Thanks a lot. Especially be prepared. Thanks a lot. Especially be prepared. Thanks a lot. Especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.